Hello and welcome back to the Point and Laugh podcast with your hosts,
Skyler
and Kaylynne.
All right, let's get this show on the road. So I was going to say this last episode because it had something to do with J.K. Rowling, oddly enough, but then we just didn't have enough time. There was already plenty to say about Joanne, my enemy. But basically, I came across this video. Hannah and I went out shopping last weekend, and we were just waiting for our coffee, and I was scrolling, and I found this video of just this asshole, like, basically stalking Dylan Mulvaney. And I was complaining to her, and Hannah didn't even know who Dylan was. So for like a little bit of context, because I keep forgetting that the internet is a big place and not my bubbles. I mean, I feel like Dylan has surpassed this bubble, unfortunately. But my bubble is still my bubble, and the internet is a wide place. So if you don't know who Dylan Mulvaney is, basically over the pandemic, Dylan started this series on TikTok being like, you know, day blank of being a girl. And it was basically her experience in finding her own personal style, on transitioning, on meeting new people, discovering new aspects of womanhood, etc. On her 100th day of being a girl, she did a face reveal of unveiling her face after her feminization surgery. And in general, Dylan is one of the most positive people that I've ever seen on the internet. She makes very not calculated, makes her sound like a mastermind, but she makes very clear and distinct moves to keep her platform a place of positivity, of just she's so endearing, and she's just so eager to help out. She's so eager to uplift voices. She takes criticism very, very well.
It's like a place of support.
Yes. And so she started to take brand deals. And because of these brand deals, because she's like any other influencer, you know, like she's a recognizable internet figure.
Well, she blew up. Like, even when you said you're like on her 100th day, I was like, damn, was that really day 100? Which, yeah, she blew up like overnight, like crazy,
because she was just such a refreshing voice, and she's just this like very bubbly, very charismatic, very like you just watch her videos and you can't like help yourself but smile a little bit. Like, she's just that type of person. But she did a couple brand deals that bled out past her usual audience. And one of the most disastrous partnerships that she did was she did one ad. It wasn't even a partnership. She did a sponsored post for Bud Light one time. And apparently if you do a sponsorship for Bud Light, they will send you, depending on how big of an influencer you are, they send you one can with your face on it. They do that all the time with like NASCAR drivers and like other influencers. They'll like, all right, so we'll give you how many thousands of dollars it takes for you to promote Bud Light on your channel, and also for decoration, here's a can of Bud Light with your face. And that literally blew the fuck up. And Bud Light's core fan base, I would if I were to describe them, I would describe the people who live in Missouri.
Yeah, I do think, unfortunately, a lot of Bud Light consumers are people who live in more conservative environments and grew up around conservative beliefs, and, you know, obviously believing that there are correct and incorrect ways to live and to express yourself. You know, I'm not trying to like give grace to these people because, you know, frankly, with the internet, there are countless resources that you have to educate yourself. But let's be honest here, like, you are the people who you surround yourself with, and if that's all you're surrounded with, then like of course that's what you're going to believe. That doesn't make it okay, but like I don't want to make it seem like we're shitting on like every single person in Missouri. I mean, I grew up in Iowa. Like,
as someone who grew up in Kansas, I am shitting on everyone in Missouri. She says in jest. Obviously, we understand. And I'm a little pissed off at Bud Light, if I'm gonna keep it a buck, because if you're going to, they must have known, like, at least part of them, like, some higher up probably knew. They're like, oh, this is probably going to be a kind of unpopular idea. So at the very least, if you're going to put one of your influencers that you work with in a position of potential danger, then I at least thought that you would have the wherewithal to protect her when shit hit the fan. And they didn't.
Yeah.
Basically, so because of the Bud Light post, basically some very bad faith conservative news outlets basically were like, Dylan Mulvaney is the new face of Bud Light, thinking that they sold her that can with her face on it as like the new standard Bud Light can.
Sorry.
Yeah. People with no like media literacy skills, 0. That Bud Light was now going to like turn your kids trans. And it sparked this idea. So now, unfortunately, even though Dylan has literally made it a point for her brand to be like an overwhelming place of positivity, if you see Dylan's face in a thumbnail, it's because some asshole has decried her as, first of all, not only the face of all trans people, which, no, never. There's never one face.
Yeah.
It used to be like every time you saw a picture of Caitlyn Jenner, that was when someone was going to start shitting on trans people. Now that Caitlyn Jenner is a Republican, they're like, damn it, we can't do that. Not anymore. Not yet. They will in a couple of years down the road. Little does Caitlyn know that surrounding yourself with people doesn't necessarily mean... Whatever. But it's very disappointing that basically, like, this Dylan hate, and now all her comments are just swarmed with, like, the most transphobic bullshit ever. Not why I'm mad, though. So the video that sparked all of this is I was scrolling through, and this man was on, like, I guess some sort of, he had like an official looking microphone and like one camera crew, so I assume it's any website news outlet basically. And he's like, I'm standing outside the Four Seasons where Dylan Mulvaney is staying, like, let's...
Oh my god.
Yeah, in LA, so let's see if we can get in an exclusive interview. And you can totally tell based on his body language and the way that he and his camera crew busted through that they were expecting like a celebrity interaction. Like, they were expecting to bust in, and then Dylan would be there, and, she would have a couple bodyguards being like, back up. She would, be like covering her face. There'd be pictures flashing. There would be your publicist there, and it would just be this big media circus. And instead, what they found is just Dylan.
Oh,
just
God.
her. She was completely alone. She didn't have a single, like, agent, manager, friend, anyone. It was just her alone checking in the front desk. And so you'd think that, like, maybe you'd reel back the energy a little bit when you realize that, like, you come in guns a-blazing and you're like, oh, I was expecting to get, like, pushback from, like, 10 different people because they've built up Dylan to be, like, the next president of the world. And they're like, oh, it's just her. But no, they have the same energy as, like, people pushing and shoving to get, like, a sound clip from Taylor Swift. Like, they're shoving this microphone in her face. She's, like, backing up. It is just her. And, like, she starts, like, kind of running down the hallway, and they're running after her.
Oh my god.
It's just her, and they're like shoving this giant microphone with a big ring light in her face, basically being like, answer for why trans people rape children. And they're like, they're shoved, and Dylan is just like, she's trying not to engage, but she's like, you can tell that she's pacing. She's going from the elevators, trying to press the button, and it's not pressing fast enough. And then she runs to the front desk, and the front desk is like, her face is blurred out, and her like hands are up like this, like she's like, I can't help you.
Yeah, I'm surprised that none of like the hotel staff stepped in.
No, and then I didn't watch the full thing, so maybe they did eventually get kicked out. But I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, okay, dude, like, I get that you hate Dylan. And one of the I guess, like, not funny, because no part of that video was funny, but he kept using her correct pronouns, and then hearing himself, and then forcibly correcting himself to say the wrong ones. He kept being like, she's running, he's running away. I'm like, no, you said it. You did it correct on, because I'm like, so that just proves you don't actually believe this shit. You're calling her correct pronouns, and then going back and doubling down on wrong on purpose, because that's not actually what you see her as. That's not actually what you believe her to be. But just like that one thing really pissed me off. It was just like, she just seemed so helpless. And it's like, I get it. You can have people that you hate, that you whatever. If I had the opportunity to, like, interview a politician that I hate, and I walk in guns a-blazing expecting to have this big takedown, and then I see them by themselves, my first thought would probably be shame and then embarrassment about being loud. His like interview questions were like echoing because the fucking like hotel lobby was empty. I don't know, that whole thing really like pissed me off. And I was gonna talk about this last episode, because then I could be like, and I wonder who emboldened assholes like that, Joanne.
I don't know. It's just horrible that...
no one deserves that. No one deserves that. But it really sucks when someone who, like, deserves it the least goes through something like that.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I unfortunately don't have any, like, thoughts other than just, like, that's horrible and no one deserves to experience that or go through that. Yeah, I'm really shocked that the hotel staff didn't step in, at least, as far as you saw in the video.
They could have afterwards, they could have after like a couple minutes been
Escorted
like, hey,
them
they
out.
escort them out of the building. But at least for like, yeah. And it, like, just for those first couple minutes, you can tell that they thought that she was going to be like mad police.
And I just can't imagine how like unsafe she must have felt. Like I feel so much for her. Like that is such an uncomfortable and like frankly scary situation to be in. Like, even if the person wasn't, saying anything like outwardly threatening or anything, like being in a position where you are basically isolated with other individuals who are making it very apparent that they don't like you for something that is out of your control, is just horrifying. And that's frankly, that's the first that I'd heard of that.
Yeah, it's just, and my first thought too is like, I think about it like, all right, what would happen if that were me? Well, I would probably flee to the bathroom, and that, I guarantee you that was a thought that Dylan had, and then she went, I can't fucking go in the bathroom. That's half the reason why they're after me. If she beelined it to the women's bathroom, I think they'd fucking call the police. Like, ugh. Anyways, not to start off this podcast already so hot and heavy, but that was just on my mind.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's
anyway, pump it back up.
Okay, so there's a couple things. One, guys, you didn't think I forgot. I have a drink of the day. It is something I've had before. It is the blood orange San Pellegrino. Can you say Pellegrino and roll your R's?
Pellegrino. Yeah, I can roll my R's. I can't say it correctly.
San Pellegrino.
Pellegrino.
Yeah.
Because I can't roll. Is it roll your R? Because it's Italian, not Spanish.
No.
Do Italians roll their R's?
I just thought it would be fun. I just thought it would sound cool. You don't have to. It's fine. No, it was stupid. No, it was stupid. Oh my god. No, why would I even say that? No. Oh wait. Oh my god, that was a good one. And that was a good one.
Me the tinglies.
I haven't had one of these since last summer. Oh my god, speaking of. Oh. Okay, wait, let me take a sip first and then. So lovely and refreshing. Speaking of, I haven't had one of these since the summer. Overnight, LA went from like 50 to 60 degrees and raining and cold. Yeah, isn't it good?
I'm getting one.
Yeah, they're delicious.
I'm getting one.
Yeah, literally overnight it went from raining and cold and like 60 degrees to, which I know that's not that cold, but like it is. To literally like 90 degrees and sunny.
Yeah, I have boob sweat right now.
Yeah, and I can't lie, I'm like kind of loving it, but
we have different reactions.
But I do wish that we had maybe a couple weeks where it was like in the 70s and 80s. Wow. Yeah, aren't they delicious?
I usually hate your beverages, so this is good.
I mean, it's just like Italian soda. There's not much else to it. But guys, so I had a tragic morning, to say the least. It was just like a series of unfortunate events that like kept unraveling. So
Count Olaf was there.
Literally. So I was supposed to have a yoga class this morning, and not just any yoga class. It was supposed to be a Doja Cat and Miley Cyrus mix yoga class, which frankly I was just so intrigued by, because I was like, what the fuck do you mean a Doja Cat and Miley Cyrus yoga class? Like, obviously it's just like yoga to their music, but I'm like, how does that work? Because usually it's very like serene, like pan flutes. And,
I can buy myself.
Yeah. And I was like so excited, and I hadn't been to the studio in a while, and I really like the studio. If you're in the LA area, it's called Y7 in Silver Lake. And so I don't live in Silver Lake. I live like 30 minutes from Silver Lake. So I already had to drive 30 minutes to get to this location. And I unfortunately was running a tiny bit late, but not even late. Like
foolish.
The class started at 10:15 and I was estimated to get there at 10:12. And I'm like, oh my God, I think this will be perfect. Where like it'll give me just enough time to like park, get inside, and like I'll the minute I'm like laying my mat out, like the class will be starting. I'm like, you know what, it's cutting it close, but it'll be fine. So I did not get there at 10:12, to say the least. I got stuck at, it seems like, every single stoplight.
Yeah.
And I was literally 2 blocks away from the place at like 10:13, and I got stuck at a 3-minute long stoplight.
No.
Yeah, no, I counted.
No, I'll wait.
So then I finally get there, and it's like 10:16, and I'm like, you know what, maybe they'll let me. But then I try and park, and all of the parking spots are taken. So then I have to go back and park on the street, which, you know, there was a spot right out front. It was fine. But by the time I walked in, it was like 10:18, and I literally walked in, and the first thing I said was, I was like, am I too late to check in? And the lady at the front desk was like, were you here for the 10:15 class? And I was like, yes. And she was like, yes, it's too late. And I was like, no, because I had just driven 30 minutes. And not only that, I had driven 30 minutes on empty. My gaslight turned on in like the last 5 minutes of the drive.
Gatekeep, Gaslight.
Yeah.
Girlboss.
So unfortunately I did not make it to the yoga class.
Oh my God,
I was
wait.
very excited for.
That whole story, Gaslight, Gatekeep, because they kept you from the class.
They did.
Girlboss.
Where does the
vibe.
girlbossing come in?
Because you want to be girlboss,
Because
but you
girlbosses, Miley
late.
Cyrus and Doja Cat.
Doja Cat.
Doja Cat. So unfortunately I did not get to go, but I will say that she was like so accommodating. She was like, oh my God, do not worry about it. Like, we will just, because, and I said this before, if you listen to our like boutique fitness class episode or whatever, there's a fee if you don't make it to the class. There's like a $23 fee.
And they'll cut off your hands.
Yeah. So she was like, don't worry about it. Like, don't worry about the fee. Like, we're just going to reschedule you for a different class. And it'll be fine. So I'm going back tomorrow at 4:30. But then the horrors have just begun. Then I had to drive back 30 minutes, back home. So I wasted like an hour in the car, which, you know, whatever, it was fine.
And sounds like it was fine.
Yeah. And I was like, I need gas. Like, I need gas. But I'm also like, if I can pay not a lot for gas, I will do that. So I was like, are there any, you know, Costco gas stations nearby? And I'm looking at the maps, and there's one like on the way, and it looks like it's like 5 minutes away. And I'm like, oh my God, perfect. Amazing. So I put it in my little maps, and I add my little stop, and I'm driving around, and then it has me get on the highway, and I'm like,
oh no.
So it doesn't seem like I would be getting on the highway if this was 5 minutes away. And then, but I'm like, you know what? Maybe it'll have me like get off. So I keep going, and then I'm like, you know what? I've been driving for like 15 minutes.
Oh my God.
And I check my maps, and it turned out that when I was looking at the Costco's, my map was upside down. So it was in fact 5 minutes from my home and not 5 minutes from the yoga studio. And I kid you not, I had the little thing on my car where it was like how many miles you had left. Mm-hmm. By the time I got to the gas station, I had 1 mile left.
Oh my God.
But then,
oh no,
as I'm in line at the gas station, a realization hits me. I don't have my wallet.
Oh no, God.
Because I was running out the door because I was late for my yoga class, and it wasn't in my yoga bag. It was in my purse that I did not bring with me. So they don't take Apple Pay, and also you need your Costco card to like even access that.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, at this point, I'm 5 minutes from home. I'm just gonna go home. So I got out of line and I went home, and I got gas on the way here. So that was my series of horrors this morning.
Dude, because one of my biggest fears is that I'll be driving and have run out of gas.
Me too. And like oh my God, where the fuck is wood?
Right here, baby.
It's fine. But that's like one of my biggest fears, because first of all, humiliating to be standing on the side of the road, just like being like,
bus driver, steady on the road.
Hi, I'm just here. And then having to like call someone. Yeah, it's a whole thing. So
braver than I.
Morning. So off to a fabulous start. But you know what? It's fine. shit happens, whatever. And it was a funny story to tell, maybe.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you enjoyed it, maybe you didn't, whatever.
I mean, I was titillated the whole time.
Ah, good. I'm so glad. So, today, we are discussing a topic that shockingly has not been on our like list of topics to discuss. And it like came to me the other week. Yeah, in a dream. It came to me the other week and I was like, oh wow, like this is something that like I should talk about. And we are talking about the ethics of thrifting.
Which is, yeah, you're right. It's incredible. It's like our main character trait is thrifting. So you'd think this would have come up sooner.
So, I think everyone kind of knows, but like, obviously over the last decade, there has been an undeniable increase in prices at thrift stores, which, you know, inherently makes them less accessible to people who rely on thrift stores for their goods. And there's no denying that this is a direct cause of the popularization of thrifting, and how it's become more mainstream as a way for people to, you know, like update their wardrobes and such. However, I do think a lot of people misdirect their anger at individual consumers when individual consumers aren't the ones who are deciding on the prices of items that these stores get for free. It's in fact the organizations and the companies who are deciding on, you know, how to price their items. And obviously there is an effect of supply and demand and things like that. But I feel like you can't even really argue that because there's so much supply of unused and unwanted clothes that end up in thrift stores or landfills or get shipped off to other countries. Like there is such a large supply that there's really no excuse for these organizations to be pricing their goods the way that they do. However, I do want to first and foremost acknowledge my own bias in this topic because I think it's really important to have that context when, you know, discussing something that I am an active participant in. So, first of all, I am fortunate and privileged enough that I've never had to rely on a thrift store to get my goods. I've always had other options if I needed them. I am also an active secondhand shopper. I would say like 50% of my wardrobe is probably secondhand. Not all from thrift stores. You know, I shop from like ThredUp, eBay, vintage markets, Depop, you know, things like that. But a large majority of it is from thrift stores. And basically all of my furniture is secondhand. That's in my apartment, except for like some Target like bookshelves and like my desk. And I don't know if you know this, so we'll see. But during the pandemic, I was a Depop reseller.
Oh no.
I don't think you do that.
Kaylynne!
Well, okay, I'm gonna go into, I don't think being a Depop reseller is like the most evil thing you can do on the planet. And
no.
obviously like I have bias because I was there. But that was how I made my income during the pandemic because the retail store that I worked at previously was closed. So I really had no other way, or I mean, there were other ways, I'm sure, but like it was something I did to make money during the pandemic. So overall, like I have skin in the game, and I think that's important to acknowledge when discussing, you know, this topic. So first and foremost, or I guess I already did first and foremost. I can't say that again.
First and second most.
Second most. Let's go into my opinions on this topic.
On a podcast?
I know, crazy. And obviously, if any of our 10 listeners have differing opinions, like I'm totally open to other experiences and opinions that other people may have on this topic because it is kind of a controversial topic. But I do think it's a much more nuanced topic than a lot of people like to perceive. So here are my thoughts on reselling. Overall, I think reselling is fine as long there's a little caveat. As long as you're sourcing your inventory from things like the Goodwill bins, clothing pallets, your own closet, things like that, where like that's their last stop before they end up in either a landfill, another country, or, you know, if it's your own closet, like I feel like you have the right to sell things from your own closet if you want to, because you purchased them. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you can be as delusional as you want when it's your own shit.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's not selling. Well, because it's $200 and it's something you got from Justice.
Yeah.
Like 15 years ago.
Crazy. I know the Real does this. I know, oh my God, what's that one? Why can I not think of the name? The super expensive online shop that starts with an R. I can't remember. I don't know.
I'm only thinking of Reddit. I'm so sorry.
Well, but there are lots of places where, like, if their items are flawed or something, they'll put them aside and they will sell them in pallets to people. So there are a lot of resellers who just buy pallets where they're selling, like, they either mend those items and resell them, or they are just selling them at, you know, a discounted price because they have flaws in them. So overall, like, keeping clothes and, you know, material goods out of landfills is a good thing. Like, extending the lifespan of a clothing item is a good thing. And frankly, I think it's perfectly ethical to resell if you are pricing your items fairly. So Depop, stop charging $60 for a stained children's t-shirt from Gap and calling it a Y2K fairy popcorn vintage baby tee. That's not what it is. It's a stained t-shirt that belonged to a child that you're now selling for $60. Like, you know, it's like when people price their items fairly, I think that's totally fine, especially if you are someone who, like, for example, if you're going to the Goodwill bins and you are sorting through items and you are curating the pieces that you sell, you know, you might
probably cleaning them, hopefully.
Yeah, and like you might clean or repair those items. It takes time to ship them. Like, there is time and effort and labor that goes into reselling, that I think a lot of people don't always, like, consider right away. But again, like, unfortunately, not everyone is pricing their items fairly. And again, I don't think you should be, as a reseller, also just from a business perspective, like, that's a fucking stupid idea, is to, like, go to local thrift stores and, like, clean out their inventory in every size and everything that's cute, buying up all the plus size clothing and reworking it to be a size extra small and then selling it for $200 on Depop. Like, obviously that is not ethical, but I think it does depend where you source your items from. And as an average consumer, moving on from reselling and just, like, as a consumer going to a thrift store when maybe that's something that you don't necessarily rely on, I don't think there's much guilt that should go with that either. If you are, you know, an average consumer who goes, you know, maybe like once a month or once every couple months or whatever, and you are being mindful about your purchases, that's not going to destroy the thrifting ecosystem. Even though there are more people thrifting, everyone's a different size, everyone has different clothing preferences, material preferences, styles. Like, there's enough to go around if everyone is intentional with the items that they're thrifting. And obviously this goes with not just thrifting. I think that's with any purchase. Like, it's important to be intentional with it and make sure that it's a piece that, like, you're actually going to wear, that you actually really love, and that you're going to get use out of. And of course, like, thrifting has been directly impacted by fast fashion in that the average consumer is buying more goods to keep up with these constantly evolving and rapid trend cycles. And because these trend cycles change so quickly, like, people are just buying more shit.
Yeah.
So,
things at a thrift store, I'm like, weren't you just in fashion, like last year? And they're, like, covered in like, just, like, wall to wall in the Goodwill.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's just sad. A lot of Shein, where I'm like, that was, like, the dress to buy last year, and now it's, like, racks on racks on racks of Shein. The fucking clothes are falling apart off the hangers, and you're like, oh, good. Glad you saved this one from the landfill.
I know, you're like, yay. I always feel so conflicted whenever I go to a thrift store and I find something that's new with tags, because in some ways, like, if it's something that you're going to purchase, it's kind of like, oh, damn, score. Like, you know, this would have been like $70 if I would have bought it retail, but I'm getting it for $5.99. Like, that's awesome. But on the other hand, it also goes to show that, like, people just buy things without really thinking about it, and then never end up wearing it, and then it just ends up going to a landfill. And also I think especially with thrifting, it's important to be intentional because most of the time items are supposed to be priced below retail value. So if something's like cheaper and you're like hesitant on it, you might just buy it anyway because you're like, oh, it's $3. Like, why not? You know? But it's like, even if it's $3, if you're not going to wear it, like you still probably shouldn't buy it. So that's something that I've definitely had to work on myself too, is just like really inspecting an item and thinking about how it's going to fit into my closet, into the things I already own, if I can style it different ways, if it's a material I'm going to wear, if it it's important to be really mindful, because there's been a couple times where like I have something on my thrift wish list and then I find something similar, but it's not exactly what I'm looking for, but I buy it anyway because I'm like, oh, it's close enough, and then I don't end up wearing it because it doesn't have the features of like the original item that I was looking for. So I think that's important to be mindful as well. And then kind of like last on the list, if you can afford to, support resellers, ethical ones. Let's put that one in there. Ethical resellers, if you can. I think it's always great to support those people. If you go to a local flea market, even on Depop, if you find people who are selling like quality items for a reasonable price, they probably do put a lot of love and care into the items that they curate, and a lot of those people are like vintage enthusiasts and they really, really care about the items that they're selling, and they're happy that they're going to a good home. And Depop is not the only reselling platform. I love places like eBay and whatnot because they have bidding systems, and I feel like that's the best way to ensure that you as a buyer are getting a fair price on an item, and then also the seller that you are selling it for what it is worth, because obviously like if you want something you're gonna bid on it, and it really it can only go so high because it's only going to go as high as people are willing to pay for it. So I think that's kind of a win-win situation, like platforms like that. So now I did kind of a deep dive on, well, actually, first off, what are your opinions? What's your like thrifting opinions? You can totally like negate everything I just said. So go ahead.
2 things.
Yeah.
2 of my, I know that like resellers I think of resellers kind of similarly to how I think of people who operate thrift markets, where I'm like, yes, this top is a little bit more expensive if I'd gotten it at Melrose than if I just found it at Goodwill, because a lot of the pricing reflects also the labor that found it. Whoever drug it out to the market at 8 a.m, set it up, whatever, they're going to also want to get paid for that. So it's a little bit like, meh. But again, like if it's like a curated piece, then I get it. But I keep seeing a lot of videos because my TikTok knows that I love thrifting, and so it just recommends me to a lot of resellers, and it is just kind of disheartening to see like resellers go in and they have like overflowing carts, and you're just like, okay, well, you've just cleaned us out, like that entire thrift store is now cleaned the fuck out. And they'll get like a comment basically being like, hey, can you leave some clothes for like, not just that you can stock up like your own online store, but so like other people can buy them, not just from you. And they'll make like the reseller will make this like snarky TikTok comment, basically just like panning throughout the Goodwill, basically being like, look at all the stuff I've left though. Look at all I've cleaned out this Goodwill. None of these clothes are even here. Like look at all these clothes that I left behind. And it's like, okay, you've just taken like vintage, like Christine whatever, a Dior bag and all these like amazing thrifted clothes for like models to wear, and you've left behind like the 2002 Color Run t-shirts and the ripped up stained skirts from 2003 and the shoes that no one wears. Oh, you're a fucking saint.
Yeah.
Thank you for so it's like, it'd be kind of disheartening, like, as someone who thrifts a lot, to, like, go into a thrift store and you know it's been cleared out, because then it's, like, the incentive to just go and, like, explore yourself has been taken a little bit. Like, again, there are so many clothes in the world, and, like, I don't think, that if a Goodwill is sucked up dry one day, come back 2 days from now, it'll be basically an entirely different thing. Because they're constantly like putting shit back on the shelves, getting new shipments. So I think it's always going to be a dice roll. But you can always tell that, like, you got up that morning and you put on your shoes and you want to go thrifting. You can just tell that, like, there's nothing here, because the Depop reseller that's standing right next to you with like their perfect Bella Hadid outfit and their headphones, their giant, there's always have the most giant chunky headphones, has like all of these really awesome things in their cart.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, why do I even try? Like, it's going to be a lot harder for me to find my own pieces. And a weird thrifting subset that I found myself in, because I follow a lot of costumers, because I love vintage stuff, but not just like vintage like 90s, 60s, 70s, but like 1800s. I follow like costuming people, and what they are getting pissed off about for TikTok Depop resellers and thrifters is that they'll take a piece, it's like a classic piece, and like there's so much personality to it. Like there's nothing that you know how sometimes you're watching TikTok videos and someone like gets like a mansion, and then they like repaint all the walls gray and they replace the stained glass windows with like regular windows, and you're like, just fucking leave the house if you didn't like it that much. They'll have this like beautiful like 70s dress, and it's like gorgeous and it's in such high quality, and then they'll be like, what fucking grandma wants to wear this, and they'll cut it up into like this dress that follows that fast fashion cycle, and so will probably be out of quote unquote out of style in a year and go right. So because they always say, they're like, you know, I saved this dress from the thrift store. No one else was buying it, and it was probably going to go in a landfill anyway. So I decided to purchase it and wear it. And like, I guess in the grand scheme of things, it is better. I guess that one article of clothing got like at least one more good run for like one more year before it got sent right back to the landfill pile. But like, it just feels weird that like for a lot of like the people who buy thrift store clothes and then like alter them to like fit a very small fashion movement, it's like you could have left that, and that could have been timeless for someone else who would have genuinely appreciated it and not whatever. So like, you take these like genuine vintage well-made pieces, cut them up to go to Coachella, and then you're like, okay, well 2 months from now this will be ugly, right back into the Goodwill bins you go. And it's like, well, that was just a waste. That was a waste of what you've just done.
Exactly. And they're definitely, I mean, I've definitely purchased things and tailored them to fit me better, but like, when I say that, I mean like pants that are like maybe 1 or 2 sizes like larger than my normal size. Like, I'm not buying like plus size pants and then like reworking it into this denim skirt, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, that's could, like,
one really famous like seamstress on TikTok bought this like literally perfect condition like 1930s like wedding gown.
Holy shit.
And she cut the whole thing so it became like, she turned it into a Selkie dress. If you don't know the Selkie dress, the silhouette is like, it ends right above
it's so recognizable and it's so trendy.
Yeah, the Selkie dress, like, it's so short, the sleeves are really puffy, and the waistband is all the way up here, and she added like glitter and rhinestones to it, and people were like, okay, well, I guess you're well within your rights to do that, but I wish you hadn't, or at least do a different one. Like, if you just wanted fabric, there's fabric at the thrift store. I love when people go to the thrift store and they go to like the tablecloth sections. Or like go to the bed sheets. Pull like your Sound of Music moment, like Maria, and make dresses from the curtains. Or like the Enchanted moment and make dresses from the curtains. Or like old napkins where it's just like swaths of fabric that you can do whatever you want with. If you wanted to make a really trendy dress, make a really trendy dress. Don't cut up this like... And whatever, there's so many wedding dresses at the thrift store. You can tell someone, you're like, oh, that's stained. Those have armpit stains. That's from the 80s. Who cares? But like the ones that are genuinely like kept in near perfect condition that someone's like, this would be so good for me to like cut up into like rave outfits where it's like strips over their nipples and underneath whatever. And then like, I'm like, then what's the point?
Well, and that's the thing that I don't understand as well, where it's like, if you were truly concerned, let's say you find this gorgeous piece at the thrift store and you are truly like, someone needs to own this. It's not right for me. It doesn't fit into my, personal style the way it is, but it's so gorgeous and I want to make sure it doesn't end up in a landfill.
Yeah.
Because the unfortunate thing about thrifting is like, sometimes you will find a really wonderful item and you're like, I'm going to leave it for someone. And then it's like,
that someone never comes.
Yeah. It's like, what if no one does it? So let's just say, let's
for the sake of argument, go full Ben Shapiro. Hypothetically, for the sake of argument, hypothetically.
You're like, this is a gorgeous piece. Someone needs to own it. That someone is not me, but someone needs to own it. I need to make sure this doesn't end up in a landfill. Okay. purchase that item, sure. Relist it on eBay, Depop, whatever, for the same price that you bought it for, or maybe like $1 more if you're like, my labor.
Yeah.
Bitch, you were already at the thrift store. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
But like, you know, if you were to do that where you're like, I saw this piece, I loved it, unfortunately it doesn't fit me, it doesn't work for my style, but like someone needs this item, and you know, you're selling it for like $10 or something like that, you know, whatever, that's fine. You probably could have just left it at the thrift store, but like, that's fine. But yeah, it's the people who are like, well, I just had, like, it was so gorgeous, I just had to like rework it to make it fit me, and to make it all the, and it's like, no, like,
and that's the whole point of
but you
thrifting.
didn't.
Now I'll wear it. It's like, well, you weren't gonna
yeah, it's one thing to like buy a pair of jeans in your size and like paint them.
Yeah.
Like that's something completely different. But again, like I think it totally comes down to how you source your items. And like if you're going to a local thrift store and clearing out the entire thing, like that's not an ethical way to be a reseller.
Yeah. People do the same thing with furniture too.
Yeah.
They're like this mid-century modern like desk, and then they just like, so I sanded it down and I painted it pink and I added like chalkboard paint in the middle, and now it's like a millennial's nightmare, and I'm like,
and now it's on Facebook Marketplace for $700.
It's like me when I get you.
Yeah, it's like, no. Okay. Anyway,
Yes.
So I kind of did a deep dive on 3 major competitors in the thrifting market. So we're going to be talking about Goodwill, which obviously is like the most widely known thrift store across America. It's in Canada too, but I can't speak to how popular it is in Canada. I'm assuming it's just as popular.
Canada's my enemy.
Yeah, I'm like, who knows? Who knows? But we're going to be talking about Goodwill, the Salvation Army, and Savers.
I miss Savers. There's
one in Arcadia. Well, let's speak on it, and then we can discuss.
Okay.
So, Goodwill. Let's Goodwill. Why did I say
Goodwill?
Goodwill.
Don't ever do that. I just got chills.
So Goodwills are run regionally. So there is a like larger. It's like Goodwill. I think it's just called Goodwill Industries. It is like their overall website, but Goodwills are run regionally. And each regional chain is completely like autonomous from each other. So for example, when I was living in Chicago, I was a part of the like Goodwills of Southeastern Wisconsin and Metropolitan Chicago rewards program. But then when I moved to Indiana, I had to re-register for their rewards program because it's a completely different like entity basically. So because these are run completely independent of each other, it's kind of hard to pinpoint like where exactly their proceeds are going to, and what percentage of their profits are reinvested in the community because it is different region to region. And also the pricing is completely different region to region, which is why Goodwills in Southern California price their items a lot higher than Goodwills in Indiana, for example.
Boo.
I had to burp. So, what's Goodwill's mission?
This is ruin my wallet.
This is directly from their website. This is from the Goodwill of Southern California website because, again, each entity is kind of different. But since 1916, Goodwill of Southern California's mission has been to transform lives through the power of work.
Oh.
Interesting. We serve individuals with disabilities and disadvantages by providing education, training, work experience, and job placement services.
Oh, yeah. That's like all over their walls and stuff.
Yeah. So they are all about like jobs, basically.
The business is all about jobs.
It's about labor. It's about making sure that, individuals with disabilities are like still allowed, I guess,
to join the capitalist cog in the machine.
Yeah. But so that's what like their proceeds go to, is they go to their, they like try and reinvest in the community, to, serve these individuals with opportunities. So the company says that, because I was like, okay, this is my main thing with thrift stores where I'm like, stop. I was gonna ignore it, but you had to point it out. It's okay. My like biggest issue with thrift stores, with the pricing, is like, okay, you got this for free. You literally got this for free, and not only that, it was brought to you. Like, you didn't even have to go and pick anything up. Like, sometimes they'll pick up furniture, which that's like kind of the only case, but it's like, this was brought to you, like to your doors. Like, you had to do nothing. So why are you selling something that you got for free $50 just because that's like its value? So the company says that they price their goods according to what is competitive in the local markets. And they do this because, obviously a larger profit margin means that we can do more for our mission.
I'm smelling bullshit.
Yeah, which I'm, not obsessed with that reasoning. I think that you would still probably make plenty of money if you priced all of the items that you got for free for $5.99.
Also, why be competitive? Why would you want to keep up with market trends? You'd be like, well, we have to sell this cup for $7 because if you buy it new, it's also $7. Like, then why wouldn't I buy it new? Your logic is flawed.
Whenever they sell Shein stuff for like $12, and I'm like, it's cheaper on the website. Like, what are you doing? So obviously, you're kind of questioning. You're like, okay, so how much are they actually giving to the people? So salaries for the local CEO and top 4 vice presidents in, I believe this was in Georgia, topped over 6 figures each and included tens of thousands in bonuses for all 5. So I found it. So their executives are making pretty decent money. It would appear from most of the articles that I found, it seems like they're making around 150,000 to 200,000, which don't get me wrong, is a shit ton of money, but it's not as much as obviously the CEO of Coca-Cola is gonna make.
Yeah.
But it's still a lot of money, and you're a nonprofit, so
yeah. Ooh.
What are you doing? That being said, they are actually one of the better organizations when it comes to how much of their proceeds are actually being reinvested in the community. In 2014, its audited financial statements reported that Goodwill devoted they devoted 95% of its revenue to programs that helped the disabled and others who have difficulty securing work. So 95% is actually really good.
That's not bad.
And again, this obviously varies from region to region, but most of the sources that I found said anywhere from 80 to 95%. So overall pretty decent. And I can't remember what it was, but I read somewhere that some organization or whatever says that anything over 65% is better than average.
Oh good.
Unfortunately.
Oh good.
However, we all know Goodwill has, gotten into a couple things in the past, unfortunately.
The conglomerate?
Yeah. So in 2012, it was reported that Goodwill pays their disabled workers below the minimum wage, which is a legal thing to do under one of the labor laws in the U.S., unfortunately. But they were paying as low as 22 cents an hour.
Excuse me?
Which means in an 8-hour shift, you're making $1.76.
Well, dang, Pappy. Can I go and buy a soda fountain for 5 cents?
You literally can't even buy, a Coke. A Coke would be, $2.50.
That's Great Depression prices.
Yeah. So
are you gonna ride a mule to work?
And granted, that wasn't every single, again, because everything is regional. This is what's so tricky about it, is that that's not every single store. That's just some stores that they found, but still not great, obviously not great.
No bueno.
The foundation also introduced cuts to wages depending on an employee's performance.
Okay.
Which you're kind of okay, I guess that makes sense. If you're underperforming, you shouldn't be paid as much as
looks
someone
like
is
you
doing.
Don't deserve to eat this week.
Yeah, it's I guess that kind of makes sense, but also that's not good. Just pay your employees what they deserve. But for example, if you're blind and you can't hang garments as quickly as a sighted individual, you could get your pay deducted.
Yeah, you can't on one hand be no, we're Goodwill.
Yeah.
We hire almost exclusively those with disabilities, and if they're disabled, we don't have to pay them any money.
Yeah, we don't have to pay them anything. But we're a nonprofit, so it's fine.
No.
So again, that was in 2012, so you might be okay, that was a decade ago. Surely things have gotten better. Kind of. Frankly, it has.
Dude, 2012 was a decade ago.
Yeah, I know, isn't that fucked up?
I just start throwing up. I just puke in the microphone.
But as of April 2022, there are still 19 Goodwills across the U.S. that report holding a certificate for the practice of paying disabled workers below the minimum wage. For context, there are over 3,300 stores in the U.S. and Canada. So, like, 19 out of 3,000, like, really isn't horrible, but let's be honest, like, that should be 0.
That's more than how many people died in 9/11.
Anyway.
I don't know why that's my automatic unit of measurement.
How many people died in 9/11?
You shouldn't have shown me the 9/11 footage if you didn't want me to remember how many people died.
Yeah, you didn't want it to get stuck up here. So, like, things have gotten better, but, like, definitely not perfect. But frankly, in doing this research, like, Goodwill wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And granted, like, there could be more out there that I just didn't stumble upon. Like, I don't know. This is just out of the things that I read in the articles I read. And again, everything, or not again, but we say this in every episode, like, all of the resources that I used will be linked in the show notes. And then this is just, like, for fun. So there was a pretty big scandal in 1998.
Damn it. So close to when I was born.
Where 7 family members who worked within management for local Goodwill stores in San Jose were charged with grand theft and conspiracy charges for a 15-year-long embezzlement ring. Officers seized more than $425,000 in cash. This was in 1998. More than $1 million in bank accounts, 6 homes, 16 cars, 25 guns, and records that allegedly detailed distribution of stolen funds from the suspects. So again, this was done at a regional, like, managerial level. Like, this was not some, like, higher up conspiracy that occurred within Goodwill. It was just kind of like something that happened within this one region. And it was this family who all worked as managers at, like, different Goodwill stores. However, so it doesn't necessarily say anything about Goodwill as a whole. However, it does show how easy it is to exploit a nonprofit business model for personal gain. And also, this happened over 15 years and, like, no one caught it.
Next time I go to Goodwill and I look at a vase and it's gonna be like, $12.49 for this busted up vase, I'm gonna go, this is part of that conspiracy ring. You think you got the last of them? You didn't. You should have killed them all. There's always if you leave one left behind, they're gonna go on a revenge quest.
They're gonna know. Okay, so moving on. We have the Salvation Army.
Boo, tomato, throwing tomatoes.
Similar to Goodwill, Salvation Army is run regionally. Although they only have 4 regions in the U.S., whereas Goodwill has 13 regions just in the state of California. So their regions are, like, on multiple states, whereas California, they're, like, counties, you know?
Yeah.
But it depends. So the Salvation Army is a faith-based organization, which of course means that there's a lot of discrimination throughout the organization, specifically regarding those in, like, queer spaces. In 2017, Think Progress reported that the Salvation Army Substance Abuse Center was one of 4 New York-based facilities that was found to engage in violations of city laws, including refusing to accept transgender people as patients.
Oh, God.
Assigning rooms to transgender people based on their assigned sex at birth.
Oh, good.
And requiring transgender patients to undergo physical exams to determine whether they're on hormone therapy or if they had undergone surgery.
Oh, come the fuck on. So Dylan Mulvaney was relevant to the topic of this episode.
that actually was a very good kickoff to this.
Every year around Christmas time, there's, like, the Facebook post pull up, like, do not give money to the people ringing the bells. They hate gay people. Yeah.
So
boo the Salvation Army. Boo.
That was in 2017. More recently, the Salvation Army has kind of undertaken a don't ask, don't tell stance. And
worked
this
really
is,
well for the U.S. military.
Yeah, and this is directly from their website. We serve the most vulnerable regardless of age, race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. Our hearts, services, and facilities are open to all. And in Las Vegas, they have a shelter that has separate quarters for transgender people, and they call it the Safety Dorm. And it's basically to ensure that, like, transgender individuals aren't being harassed or put in uncomfortable situations by cis tenants. So, like, that's something good. But again, that's, like, one place.
It's regional, yeah.
Yeah. And in 2019, the now retired national commander of the Salvation Army said, It's true that the Salvation Army's pastoral leaders who subscribe to the international tenets of the church on which we are founded do themselves adhere to a traditional biblical definition of marriage. So, while they're not, like, outwardly bashing gay and trans people, they're also not outwardly advocating for them. And obviously, this goes for really any business or organization. Poor management is going to create a poor environment. And by having leaders throughout the organization who believe in discriminatory and dehumanizing ideologies, they're creating an environment where those beliefs are allowed to thrive.
Yeah.
So overall, their history isn't great. They've gotten marginally better, frankly, like the bare minimum, in just like treating transgender people as people. But obviously there's still like a long way to go. And with Salvation Army and Goodwill too, I feel like you could kind of argue like, you know, it's better to support these businesses that are at least helping like rehabilitate people and provide shelter to homeless individuals than something like Urban Outfitters where like, what the fuck are they doing? You know, like that's just getting pocketed. But you know, it is, if you have a choice to shop somewhere else that is, you know, maybe has more ethical practices, then like, that's probably the choice you should make.
I think of the Salvation Army kind of similarly to how I think of Hobby Lobby, where it's like, if I go up to right now to like Hobby Lobby and I'm like, hey, I'm gay, give me a job, they're gonna be like, oh sure, and they'll probably give me like a little rainbow pin to like whatever.
Yeah.
But they won't fund my birth control if I'm on their insurance plan, and all the money that they get, they will donate to to organizations that are looking to demote those that are different from them. So it's one of those things where, and also like in California, you just have so many other choices.
Yeah.
Like, especially in LA, throw a rock and you'll hit like 4 thrift stores, 2 pop-up shops, 5 like resellers in the face. Like there really is no need to find a Salvation Army anywhere near.
Go to
here.
a yard sale. Like
literally, there are options. Yeah. I think Salvation Army can be where you go if like, again, like if you're not looking to revamp, you know, your personal style. If you're not looking to like, oh, I want something cool. If you're looking because you need a shirt. Yeah. Or like you're looking because you need glassware, you can go to Salvation Army because you can't afford to care about that shit. You need clothes and you need glassware and you need a coat. You know, like, exactly. And if that's the case, then like go off to your heart's content. But for those of us that thrift for fun, like you have options, and the Salvation Army kind of really shouldn't be one of them, especially like when there are so much more. Like even back home, like we had a Salvation Army. Not only was that shit whack because they didn't have anything good. It's just like even in my hometown, there were other places that you could get cooler stuff. So it's like, why? Leave the Salvation Army to the people that like probably genuinely need it, and you can go to like the quote unquote more fun stuff. And then we can have that discourse there. But I feel like the Salvation Army is kind of in a league of their own.
Exactly. It's like if you're in a position where like, you know, maybe you don't own a car, that's the closest one to you. You live in a rural area and you don't have any other options. Like, of course, you know, it's probably better to shop there than to, you know, shop at some fast fashion place. And especially if that's your only option, like, you know, that makes sense in that situation. But if you have other options, it's, you know, important to be a mindful consumer. So moving on to Savers and Value Village.
Savers.
So,
oh no.
So
what did they do?
The thing is,
why are you shaking your head?
They're not bad in the way that like they're actively transphobic and they're like paying disabled workers 22 cents. But they are...
What?
They're not a nonprofit. They are a for-profit business. So, yeah. Unlike Goodwill and the Salvation Army, Savers doesn't have a specific cause that its proceeds go to. Their, like, quote-unquote mission, based off their website and their marketing, is simply to keep items out of landfills and to promote sustainability. So, where does the money go?
Oh, no.
First and foremost, they are a for-profit company. This is directly off their website. We're a for-profit company.
Show me where I said we're a pro-profit company. We're a pro-profit company.
We're a for-profit company that champions reuse. Shopping in our stores doesn't support any nonprofit, but donating your reusable goods does. We pay nonprofits for your stuff, helping them fund programs in our communities. TVI Incorporated is a registered professional fundraiser where required. So basically what that means is if you donate, because if you donate to Savers, you get like a tax deduction form. And so essentially what they do is they take the middleman out of the like organizations that they quote unquote support. So previously or historically, Savers was based on a model where all of their items, they didn't get any items from the public. All of their items came from these specific organizations that that sold goods to them. And then Savers would purchase those goods from them. And then like, that's how they're helping the nonprofits. And then they would sell them obviously marked up. So at least 6 times since 1987, Washington, Savers is a Washington-based company. Oh. It's like around the world, but like that's where they were headquartered. So at least 6 times since 1987, Washington authorities have told the company to register as a commercial fundraiser under a state law meant to protect the public from deceptive fundraising. Oh. Commercial fundraisers must report how much they raise for charity and what percentage they keep for themselves. So that was in 1987. In 2014,
damn it,
Savers finally registered as a commercial fundraiser, which required them to report how much they were giving to charity. So before that, they weren't reporting shit. And it also appears that they failed to file a number of required reports over the last 15 years. And at least 5 years worth of financial reports were missing, covering the years of 2007 to 2011. So, like I mentioned before, you can still get a tax deduction from donating to Savers. And I kind of explained how, but it's like, okay, where is it going? Each state is different. For the state of California, Savers is partnered with the American Red Cross, the Epilepsy Foundation of America, and PARCA, which is Partners and Advocates for Remarkable Children and Adults. And they basically just support families and children who have developmental disabilities.
Okay. Goodwill's like, that's my bit, but whatever.
Yeah, I know. They're like, interesting.
Step off, my market.
So that's how they like donate, quote unquote, is that they are taking your items that you donate and then they're paying what those items are worth per pound, not individually, but per pound. And they are giving that money to those organizations.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's how their quote unquote fundraising works. But these in-store donations pay charities far less per pound than merchandise brought in by the charities themselves. So like if the charities were just to, sell these items themselves, or even if they were to have these items and give them to Savers and Savers were to buy them, like they would be getting more. And again, everyone is giving these items to Savers for free. And at least around here, I can't speak for other regions, but at least in Southern California, Savers is like the most expensive thrift store.
I haven't been to a Savers out here. The reason I was like, yay, Savers, is because back home, like, that's where all the good stuff was. Mm-hmm. Like, you go to Goodwill, and, like, my friend worked for Goodwill for a period of time, and they were like, do not buy your shit here. Like, they're like, it's fucking filthy. Like, we don't wash any of it. Like, they're like, I've seen the back rooms of Goodwill. I've seen shit. Like, literal feces. Like, you don't shop at Goodwill. And the Salvation Army, like, is caca. So I would... back home, Savers was like where the actual good stuff was, and comparatively, Savers was like the cheapest option.
Interesting.
It was either that or you go to like a ma and pa, like they rented out like a room in their house, and they're like, "This is my thrift store," and you're like, "Okay, grandma."
No, the Savers out here is so expensive, but I will say, because I have gone a few times, they do have good stuff. They do have good stuff.
Do they just buy exclusively the good stuff? What's going on here?
I don't know. But their prices are like, they're one of those places where like they're gonna sell a leather jacket for $60, or all of their dresses are like $12.99. Their tops are like $7.99. If it's a nice top, it'll be like $15.99. Like they price their items based on what it's worth, basically, or what it like could resell for, which is unfortunate, especially knowing that most of that money doesn't end up anywhere other than the pockets of
Mr. Saver.
Yeah, exactly. So Investigate West, which is a nonprofit investigative journalism newsroom, they had like multiple articles on Savers. Someone who works there fucking hates Savers. There were like 5 articles.
They're the rat. They're like, and another thing.
But they found that sometimes Savers charity partners have received less than 5% of sales revenue on goods donated on their behalf. Overall, it appears that between 8 and 17% of the firm's revenue ends up with the charities. So compare that to Goodwill's 88 to 95%. Like, most of it's profit. The smallest percentage of revenue paid to charities over the last 15 years by Savers, according to California records, came in 2001 when Big Brothers Big Sisters of East Bay and Oakland received 0.02% of the revenue.
Come on.
The same year, Hope Rehabilitation Services in Santa Clara received just 0.87% of Savers revenue, California Public Records State.
Dude, that's embarrassing.
Also, do you want to know something interesting?
Oh, no.
Savers was founded by the son of a Salvation Army executive.
Excuse me?
So he was literally like, this is a great business model, but we're missing something. What if it was for profit?
Yes, I like what you have going on here. Dad, shut up, Dad. Dad, shut the fuck up.
Here's what the problem.
Money?
Yeah.
Why aren't we making any money?
Yeah, founded by the son of a Salvation Army executive, which I just thought that was funny.
He's in the walls.
Yeah. But that's kind of the end of everything with, the thrift stores that I investigated. Overall, like, a lot of these nonprofit organizations obviously aren't perfect, but I wouldn't classify them as like good or bad. I think it's a more nuanced gray area where, like, yes, they're doing good things, but like their values aren't supportive of like my morals. And it's just like, it's very conflicting. But overall, like, frankly, Goodwill is like the best out of all of these options, which I wasn't expecting.
Mr. Will.
I know. And again, this is just based on like the research that I've done. So, maybe there's more out there that I just didn't come across. But they do a pretty good job of like reinvesting back into the community with the majority of its revenue going back into its mission. But, with all of these companies and really any company, or I guess, can you call it a company, organization, whatever, it's important to stay on top of them, unfortunately, because it's just so easy to take advantage of models like this. And, stay on top of them and make sure they're not doing things like exploiting their disabled workers, and things like that. But with Goodwill specifically, because each region is run independently, it's kind of hard to say whether Goodwill is bad overall. More specifically, it's on a store-to-store basis. So, not all of the Goodwills are treating their disabled workers like shit, I would hope, and as the research seems to support. But there are some stores and some regions out there that unfortunately do. So, yeah, not great, but it's just kind of a nuanced topic, I think. And like, obviously I'm going to continue educating myself on this topic, and, maybe my perspective will shift 10 or, 5 or 10 years down the road. Like, you never know. But with everything, obviously it's important to just be an educated consumer at the end of the day. And I do think I'm going to stop shopping at Savers.
Yeah, no shit. God damn it. Actually, you know what? I think when I went back home for like to visit, I think I did notice that the prices were like, I was like, but I just thought that was like a market trend, and the fact that it's just I have no money than anything Savers specific. But that sucks, dude.
At the same time, I'm a little conflicted because I'm like, okay, well then, what's the difference between like Savers and like Buffalo Exchange? Like, if like that's a for-profit company, it's like somewhat curated, but like, I don't know, maybe they do donate to causes. I'm not sure. I didn't look into Buffalo Exchange at all. But it's like, okay, I guess like Savers is similar to that. Like, it's not horrible that they're a for-profit company, but they do make it seem like they're a non-profit when they're not. And I think that a lot more of their revenue should like go to the causes that they claim to support.
Yeah. And I mean, like, at the end of the day, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with, like, the idea, because basically Savers is just one big reseller.
Yeah,
Sounds like. And we're talking about resellers, talk about Savers, the biggest reseller of them all. Is it, like, seeing, like, one individual basically go into, like, places that are literally, like, designed to help the less fortunate, clear them out, and then sell what they've found for, like, twice the price, rubs me the wrong way, because it's like, okay, that's not for you. I say the same thing to my cat. I'm just like, that's not for you. And it can feel like stealing. I know it, like, logically, you know, they're not necessarily doing anything wrong, but it just feels weird. Like, can't we just have one hobby that's not poisoned by the idea of, like, the grind and, like, living in the capitalism cycle? Like, going into a charity shop and buying everything and then reselling them to make yourself more money feels wrong, right? It feels like you're going into, like, a bake sale fundraiser and, like, taking all the cupcakes and then, like, reselling them on your, like, your Etsy shop, where it's like, that's not... It feels wrong. Whether or not they're actually doing anything super wrong, I really don't think so. It can sometimes things just feel worse than they actually are. It can feel, when you're watching this, like, very like petite person be like, hi, I make this XXL t-shirt and this really cute, like, skin tight dress, and you're like, you didn't need to take that. Because I love thrifting, but, like, my sister's like, I hate thrifting, because she's like, what's the fucking point? Like, they're never going to have clothes that fit me. I'm never going to find something that's my style, because typically when she finds something that she likes, it's either ugly, because the resellers are like, ew, I can't do anything with this, or that, like, it's not really a trend anymore, but there was that trend of, like, people taking, like, the XXL, like, jeans and, like, tying them together with a fucking shoelace.
Oh, yeah.
So it looked like you had a diaper in the back, because they, like, refused to take, like, jeans that would actually fit them, and they're, like, taking away from, like, things that aren't actually their size, because they're like, oh, look, like, there's so much, like, plus-size clothing at the thrift store. Let's take it! And then people who actually need that because that's their size are like, I guess I'll just go fuck myself, and I'll go to the books and see if there's a more, like, religious books or cookbooks with, like, pages torn out. Yeah, and then I try to go thrifting with my sister, and my sister's like, nah, it's not for me. I don't win. There's no winning here. Closing out, though, because I think we've said this already on the pod, but I like our ideas of, like, our thrifting goals are different, and I think that's cute. Or, like, I go thrifting because well, I have no money, and my aesthetic is secondhand. Like, I love the idea, like, I love, like, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s things. And so, like, but if I'm going through clothes specifically, I'll go through and I'm like, this looks fun. Like a floor-length denim coat with green feathers on it, that shit's mine, because you can't find this anywhere else. And then I go thrifting with you, and you're like, look, I found a designer.
I don't know, I don't think I've said this on the pod. I've definitely said this to you before, because it's so true. My entire life, I've been a little, like, luxury girl.
What did your mom say? Wasn't she like a cigar?
That I have cigar taste on a cigarette budget. Which is so true, because I love nice things, and I love, like, good quality, and, like, linen, and so, and, like, I just love it. But it is expensive, and I cannot afford. So,
especially at Savers.
Yeah. So it's like, that's something that I love about thrifting too. And, like, obviously, like, a big thing about shopping secondhand for me is the sustainability aspect, and, like, keeping clothes out of landfills, giving clothes, you know, a second chance at life. And also, it's kind of like the individuality complex inside of me.
Oh God, yeah.
Because it's like, who else is gonna have this? Who else is gonna have this, like, 10-year-old fucking blazer from this, like, random company that no one's ever heard of? You know, like, it does. I think it adds charm to your wardrobe, and it adds personality that is sometimes hard to find when you are shopping, you know, at, I keep saying Urban Outfitters. I don't know why. There are plenty of
Target.
other stores. Yeah. But I think it just makes your closet a little more unique. And again, you can find, like, really nice pieces for really decent prices most of the time. unless you're
Savers.
I'm like, unless you're savers or you're a like disgusting Depop seller who is selling. Again, I have seen, the reason I keep bringing up the stained t-shirt is because I've seen people multiple times sell stained t-shirts for like $70. And it's like, sure, the design is cool, whatever. I can just go to my Goodwill and find something similar, or even going to like a vintage market and find something similar. And like, it might be like $25, which, you know, for a used t-shirt, like is still expensive. But if there are stains on it, it just blows my mind. It really blows my mind. And again, like, I do think reselling is kind of a very nuanced conversation as well. And I completely agree with you when, not me like defending myself, but like when I was reselling, I went to the bins. I went to the Goodwill bins, and I was
last stop shop,
elbowing people. No, just kidding. I was trying to.
I was the one elbowed.
No, I was trying to get out of people's fucking way because it was the COVID, and I was like in gloves and a mask, and everyone's like breathing down your neck. It's horrible. But you know, I was buying things that had already gone through thrift stores, had already had the opportunity to be purchased by the community, and now this was kind of like their last stop before getting shipped off to, you know, wherever they were gonna go. And again, from a business standpoint, it makes no sense to go to a thrift store and clear it out when you can go to the bins where things are priced per pound. It just doesn't, like, why are you gonna pay $5.99 for something when you can pay 20 cents for it at the Goodwill bins? It doesn't make sense. I will say, okay, not me. Now this is just my love affair with the Goodwill bins. Another thing I love about the Goodwill bins is because Goodwill has unfortunately started jacking up their prices depending on, you know, like the quote unquote value of something.
Just the vibes.
You can find really nice pieces that, most likely the reason they weren't purchased at a Goodwill was because it was priced too high. So then you can buy it and it's like $1.
Yeah, my favorite tote bag of all time I got from the Goodwill bins for 25 cents.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, but that's it from me.
Yeah, we're pro thrifting. Don't get us wrong, but
it's a conversation to be had because I think there are a lot of unethical ways to thrift and unethical ways to you know, consume secondhand fashion and to sell secondhand fashion. And yeah, overall, I feel like it comes down to consumption. And maybe if you get things for free, stop jacking them up at 600 times, you know.
I have a story to close this out.
Oh my God, please.
I was thrifting, and I found this this light green like cardigan tank set, and I reached for it. And I took it off the shelf because I'm like, oh, I want it. And I took it. And then I have the clothing like close to my chest. And then I see this hand, like, she didn't try to take it from me or anything, but you could tell that like she was reaching for it, but I grabbed it first. I didn't even realize that we were racing at all. And she goes, lucky, that's a gorgeous piece. And I look over and her cart is literally, she was the people I was talking about. She had like the giant chunky headphones. She was like très chic. And, like, her cart was all the way full. And she just basically was just like, oh, man, I was going to grab that. And I felt this swell of pride. And I'm like, I got a piece that a Depop reseller almost got, but I was too quick. I'm taking her home. And I did. I wore the shit out of that.
Yeah.
It was a little too small, but it's fine. We make do. That's it for me as well.
Yeah. I hope
we're gonna go thrifting tomorrow.
I know. We're going to the Topanga Vintage Market.
Topanga.
Which I haven't been to before. So maybe on the next ep we'll discuss how that went. But thank you guys so much for listening and supporting as always. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you want to see our beautiful faces.
And my cat for a period of time.
Yeah. Sometimes Marnie shows up. It's a good time.
Covered in cat hair right now. The mic is just destroyed.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.